Good morning, Toby.
Good morning, David.
Here we are in December. How's it feel? Is Christmas? Is the Christmas season? Is it Christmassy enough for you?
Look, let's just get to the end of this year and then pretend it never happened and then call next year 2020.
A do-over. Yeah, I
Yep.
think that's a good idea.
I think it's a great idea. Everyone's ages gets deleted by one. We just ignore everything that happened during this, and then everything, we release all the movies in 2021. Oh my goodness, what a great film. Oh, what, wow.
Did anything good
2020
happen this
never
year?
existed.
Did anything good happen this year?
We don't want to get into the politics of it all, but yes, there was definitely some not bad things that happened, or at least one.
What was that? That you're still alive?
No, the whole Trump Biden thing.
Okay, yeah, election.
That's a good thing.
Politics.
I think.
Did
Yes.
you? I don't know if you saw the Dave Chappelle. Well, why would you really? But the Saturday Night Live monologue he did, where he said there were some good things about COVID, and one was they locked all the whiteys up, so they stopped all the school shootings. You know, so that was a good outcome.
That's okay. There you are. See,
You know, we got the dangerous people off the streets, but they did show up in some of the
man.
state's capitals.
Every COVID has a silver lining.
Well, the crisis is an opportunity.
Mm.
I can't help but feel that a lot of what's going on, though, is a distraction. That, in other words, we had a few truth tellers come to the fore, but they got quickly brushed aside because no one wants to hear the truth. Instead, they want to, perpetuate their hatred of one another. That's more interesting. The dogfight is more interesting than actual negotiations or getting real stuff done. So, well, like you, I think that COVID was a mixed blessing. Although, I got a lot of reading done. I didn't do much spring cleaning. The place looks worse than it did at the beginning of the year. So I guess 2021 will have to be the spring cleaning. But we can spring clean our mind. We can sort of remove the detritus of our mind and get into...
I've spoken about this before. I think someone needs to splice human and bear DNA, one of our listeners, and we just hibernate. We stuff ourselves in the lead up to Christmas, and then Boxing Day, we just hibernate for 3 to 4 months.
Well, it'd be good to get into all the sleep.
We burn away all the food that we ate in December, and we arise as the sun does in April, all revivified and tons of energy, and everything's great.
A phoenix rebirth. Yeah, I like that.
Yes.
So is that what you're going to look like in January? I'm going to see this new you.
What? No, because I'll be hibernating in January, so call me again in April.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I hope I see you before April because we got a lot to do. All right. The first up is our Logline Jam, which is a repeat of what we did last time, but
right.
This time we're going to have a little more cards at hand, and we're going to focus on like the character combos we did. So I don't know what to call this. Maybe we'll call it the character combo Logline Jam, where we look at two characters and the conflict between them, try to define what that is, and then see what happens. I've removed the crisis cards because I didn't feel like they were really adding much, and maybe we can come up with a crisis of our own in discussing what the conflict is. But I've added, topic, genre, random, premise cards and things to sort of juice it up and to see what happens. And I'm not going to use the timer, although I know I should, but I'll keep an eye on my watch so that we don't spend too long. Now, I was hoping we can do 3 of these, but let's see how it goes.
Okay.
All right, so I'll do the honors of dragging, I guess. Oh, unless you want to drag.
Unless you want to drag. I do not.
All right, so I'm going to randomly. I created these. I created these the night before, so I don't know. What is what. So I'm going to try to see. I can't even drag them. All right, so there's my modifier. Let's see. There's an archetype over here. Another archetype here. So these modifier archetypes are, for those who haven't seen this before, the archetype is sort of like a character archetype, and the modifier is a little adjective to describe them. And let's see. Let's choose a conflict from here. Right.
And what, may I ask, is the genre card doing?
Well, I thought if we needed some help, we could throw in a different genre and see if that gives us gooses us along towards a new approach. Great. I mean, so much of this, the way I look at it is to try to think different about something, because it's so easy to get stuck in a rut. and you don't want to do something that's overly familiar. So I try to introduce a little catalyst, something that'll prompt us to go somewhere else.
I've
And
got my
I'm
own
hoping that's
catalyst
what the
right
genre
here.
card
Yes.
is. Oh, there's the cat.
Yeah.
We needed him to
No, it's a-
select.
Catalyst.
All right, I'm going to reveal the first character
Okay.
combo.
It better be a cat, otherwise he's going to be very disappointed. Okay.
Let's see.
He's a
Why does
modifier
it say modifier? Oh, I see. Because I got that. You know,
Nerd.
I don't need these anymore, to be honest. Let me
Okay.
now that I've got these, now that we know what they are, we don't really need
Okay.
them. We can just
You're
put
right.
them to one side. So we got a caustic nerd.
Okay.
Trying to think of what this might be. You know, somebody who's nerdy, but who is extremely aggressive, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Or sarcastic, or
Yeah, nerd with wit, with a willowing wit.
possibly. I mean, either he's an Oscar Wildean sort of caustic wit thing, or maybe he does lots of sarcastic stuff on the internet.
Sarcastic troll.
Yeah, that's good. Troll. Yes.
Know it all. Yeah, this is like the IT guy who's like, oh, you're doing it all wrong. You're so stupid. Why do I have to work with these people? Look what I have to deal with every day.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yes, that's a bit of a cliche, but yes.
Yeah, okay. So it doesn't have
Then
to
again,
be an IT
I
nerd.
speak to a lot of them, and they are exactly like that. So there you go.
I used to be one, man. I was an IT admin once upon a time, many decades
what did they reveal
ago.
to me the other day? There's an abbreviate. It's PBCK, and that's what
Okay.
they'll say to people if there's a problem. They'll say, "Oh, that's a PBCK," and people won't know what that means. But they say it's all right. I'll file it under PBCK, and we'll get it sorted. And that means problem between chair and keyboard.
Okay, that's good. Problem between chair and keyboard.
Yeah.
I have another.
So one of them had a
okay.
call from a guy in the company that she was working for as an IT person who said, "I can't. My keys they're all blank. I can't." And she went up and she just discovered he hadn't cleaned his keyboard in years, so that it was just filth encrusted.
That's so gross. I used to work in an office where we had very clean keyboards because they would bring in inmates who were
Oh.
had to be I don't know what's the word, had to be watched over while they were in the office. So someone would come, watch the inmate as the inmate cleaned everyone's keyboard. So that was something that would happen every couple of weeks. So we had squeaky clean keyboards.
Wow.
So that was an interesting program. Yes, I was an IT admin for a long, long time, many decades ago. And, you know, it's the job where people call you only when there's an emergency, and it's usually in the middle of the night or something, and they're in a panic or upset. And, of course, you're the reason they can't get what they want to do done. And so you're you need to have therapy skills if you want to survive in that. Being the caustic nerd is not going to help you. I also, for the sake of it, just made me think of Embo, which was that I had a friend who worked as a waitress, and she had a lot of customers that were very, very difficult and picky. And I remember doing the same thing when I was working in restaurants. You get people who say, you know, this is not what I ordered, or this is not cream, you know, and you know it's cream, and you go back and kind of do it again.
Right.
And she used to smile and just say Embo, 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 like it was English was a second language, and everyone would smile and say it back, and it meant eat my butt out. So it was her way of dealing with some of her aggression.
Nice.
So, all right, sarcastic.
Nice.
Now, I was just thinking for a moment, the nerds that we encounter, you know, we think of IT nerds or, I don't know, science nerds or something. Is there a different type of nerd that we can think of that we haven't seen represented? I mean, usually it's someone who's just really, you know, in any story, someone who's really into their field or niche.
Yeah.
But
So I mean, it could be a
is there a niche we
collector
haven't?
of comic books or action figures or autographs.
Collector.
That's kind of the thing you feel. Because they do, all those franchises like to tickle that collecting itch, don't they?
Yeah. Just trying to think of a domain that we're not used to. I mean, you have people that are in the biological science or the etymology, or not etymology. What's the insect? My brain is really slow today. Anyway, people that collect insects and look at or detailed structures or protein folding.
Yeah, I mean, but then that's more caustic
What's an
scientist
art
than a
nerd?
nerd.
What's an art nerd? Yeah. What is the art on the more sort of right brain side of things? What would be?
But again, that would be an art collector. A nerd is a very specific thing.
How about a people person nerd who somehow collects individuals or stories, or is really into people, like a therapy nerd, psych nerd.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I guess we've seen them before, but could that lead to something else? I don't know. All right. Well, we'll noodle that in a minute. Let's have a look at this one and see what we've got here. Again, we have a modifier. We have a spineless outsider. Oh, okay. So they're an outsider, which I guess puts them at a disadvantage, but they're also spineless. Boy, we have a caustic nerd and a spineless outsider. They both sound quite negative. Can we make one of them somewhat positive? Maybe the caustic nerd is sort of, doesn't suffer fools.
In their journey could reverse their causticness or their spinelessness. So it's really the one whose journey we want to look at is the potential protagonist. The idea of an internet troll who has to learn to deal with people properly.
Ooh, that's nice.
Is something, as is a spineless outsider who is targeted by a caustic troll who learns to fight back. And that they're not alone in all those answers that 80s cartoons used to talk to us about.
Well, I wrote down an anonymity compromise because, I mean, trolls benefit a lot from, not having all their details known and whatnot. So, so maybe there's something there where the caustic nerd, feels comfortable being so, not to people's faces, but from behind a keyboard, but then something happens to force
bring
them
them face to face with someone who perhaps they targeted.
Oh yeah. Okay. So let me get this here and say confront victim of targeting or something. Confronted by, I should say, confronted by.
So seeing the, it's all perfectly fine and safe and virtual online, but seeing a real world consequence of your actions is something else. Real
world less safe than virtual. I'm going to put a question mark to that because sometimes that may be not true. So that's cool. So now the spineless outsider, I'm wondering what that could... Let's think about that slightly. Well, we don't have to think of it in isolation, but what is a spineless outsider? Who is a spineless outsider? First of all, they're not in the in group. They're sort of are they a fish out of water?
But but they could be an outsider by choice. Right? They don't have to be excluded as an outsider.
Okay.
The spinelessness sort of speaks against that, but the spinelessness could be about something else entirely. It could be about not wanting to rock the boat or not wanting to take a stand on a particular subject but all I'm saying is they don't... One way of doing this is, yes, they're shunned by other people because of whatever they do or think or feel or how they act. Or they're from a marginal group. But their spinelessness may not be linked to that group that they're a part of. It could be an entirely different thing.
I'm trying to get a feel for this. Can you think of somebody or give an example? Because I'm intrigued that an outsider is usually glorified in stories, right? It's the person on the outside looking in who's kind of a rebel, or they're going to change everything. But in this case, they're spineless, so they're feckless or something. They don't uphold any sort of, I guess, moral code or anything to kind of go with it. Actually, I mean, I'm sorry to say, but these are like there are many politicians that fulfill this role,
Yeah.
who say what's necessary to get into office, but they don't really believe in it. And they might be an outsider because they'll say, I'm outside the system. I'm not part of the Washington elite, and therefore, I'm going to be special and different and all that. But they end up being spineless because they just want the power or position or whatever. And so they use the outsider moniker to their benefit, as it says. So they're an opportunist. So I guess that's an opportunist. I wonder if there's other examples.
So a nerd goes after a politician, but then we're going to be, if the politician is an idiot, like, sorry to say, most of these outsiders appear to be, then we're just going to be cheering the caustic nerd. We're not going to want him to change.
Well, let's think
of to attack harder.
Well, the politician thing, it feels a bit tropey. Let's see, what else could it be? If you've got a nerd and you've got an outsider, so could this be a publisher or platform owner, like a Zuckerberg type? I mean, he fulfills some of those roles, I think, right?
Yes.
Oh, actually, I hate to kind of cast aspersions. Well, no, I don't hate, but using real people is sometimes a bit problematic. But what's with Jack Dorsey? The CEO of Twitter. It's like he cultivates this image of a very thoughtful, sort of kind of deep, meditative, reflective person, and then really caves in to just monetizing this thing and not doing the right thing. And it's causing enormous amounts of pain for people and outrage and all the rest of it. And so that's sort of kind of at odds with his image, right? Is that, he comes across like an outsider to the usual Silicon Valley. Oh, even better. Sorry. God, I shouldn't pick on Dorsey, perhaps when I've got the Robin Hood guys to pick on. Because here are these two Stanford grads who look very kind of lovey-dovey, little kind of hippie long-haired, and they're really friendly and fun. And they've created this this gambling machine that has already caused one suicide and other kind of horrible things. And basically, I mean, the interesting thing here is how do they make money, right? And it turns out that the way they make money is that there are these sort of market makers, they're called. They're intermediary organizations that sort of deal with options. So Robinhood can't post directly to the exchanges in which these things are traded. So they sell all the data that they're generating from the users to the market makers. The market makers use that data to arbitrage and do some hedging to sort of buy and sell options to get their margins. So they're doing it basically by using the user data, but they're gaming the system basically, because it's all just kind of leading the users to do certain things and then monetizing off that behavior because they have millisecond advantages and whatnot. They can see what orders are about to be placed, etc. So it's this kind of, I don't know what to call it. It seems like a massive scam in a way, because it's, it's positioned as we're helping, ordinary people kind of invest in themselves and build their future. But really it's like, no, man, you're going to take all your data and arbitrage it and rip everybody off. It's like a reverse Robin Hood. I mean, but what I'm getting at is the way that they sell themselves, right? It's like, we're helping all these people, but it's really hurting all these people. And they say they're injecting liquidity into the market, but they're really creating enormous amounts of volatility. And it's, it all kind of seems to me like a shell game or something. I don't know. So that to me is an interesting kind of spineless outsider. Let's see, it's somebody who sells you a false narrative. I'm doing
again,
good.
The nerd going after them is someone who people are going to be cheering for.
Yeah. So
therefore they're not going to learn the lesson about if that's the journey we want to give them. If this is Well, and, maybe we should take a look at what the center card is.
Okay, the conflict. Well, I can
Because
see something developing myself where you have a caustic nerd who's not very likable because they're trolling, they're obnoxious, and this and that. But in this case, with a company that's seen to be wonderful and for the people, they may be the one to realize that this is all bullshit, right? Because but the way they go about things makes them look like the enemy or the problem.
Okay.
When they are actually going to be the ultimate crusader.
They're having to learn how to stop these people in the real world.
So it could be like emotionally, it's the EQ is required. Right. That's something they have to work on. So all right, so let's see the conflict. You're absolutely right. We were getting ahead of ourselves, and there's a failure to launch. Well, I mean, there's several meanings to this. In the context of companies, obviously we know what that means, but there's also,
it could also be the nerd, and that's why he's become a caustic nerd.
Right. He hasn't matured enough.
And so his arc is, because this is important. If we're doing characters, then there has to be an arc. And so his arc needs to be from perhaps fail to launch to becoming the caustic nerd because he thinks that's the way to take down this group of bad guys, and then realizing that no, that doesn't answer anything.
Yeah, I'm going to say that indignation is not enough. Like if you really want to make a change, let's say, for example, in the current political environment, no matter where you land on the political spectrum, there's something to be outraged about. There's something to be indignant about because you look at the other side or what other people are doing, and you say that's crazy, or you can get upset about it. And that can cause you to become more cynical, to become more caustic. But it isn't really doing anything beneficial. You're not developing as a person. You're not creating a solution to the problem. It's just exacerbating everything. So it's like the journey we all have to go on, which is what do you do? You're told that you should forgive and forget, perhaps, but you can't forget. That's stupid. I mean, amnesia is not a solution. So you're told you can forgive. Well, I mean, is forgiveness really the way to frame it? I don't know. Maybe there's a better way to get beyond this rut. And so maybe the caustic nerd is kind of a comparison, a mirror of all of us who feel frustrated by the circumstances and impotent because of it. So what do we do? And the caustic nerd has to go on that journey. They're knowledgeable about one thing, but not about everything. And it's when you're pushing against somebody that is revered and liked, who are you to tear down, that admirable person or whatnot?
Right.
Who are you to question, them? Who are you? So there's a power imbalance there. Just going to say, who are you? Right. So indignation is not enough. So I feel like, okay, what is the solution though? When you are, I guess it's sort of activism, but it has to. Is it just activism, or is there some other way to look at it? It's also about persuasion. You can't be alone. You can't solve these things alone. You need to get other people on board. That's socialization,
which is the opposite of what he's going to be.
Because he's kind of, I take it kind of a loner. All right, so let's see. So his failure to launch. So let's see. What did he... Okay, so maybe he did something in a similar space or whatever, and it just was a failure because ultimately he was the wrong person. Somebody else...
So is he a blown out internet gazillionaire whose thing failed, and he now sits around trolling everyone else because everyone attacked him, and now discovers. I mean, actually, this is more Spineless Outsider.
Well, the other possibility is, imagine that there's remember that Steve, the sort of early Steve Jobs situation where he founds this company, Apple, right? And it's all, it has its ups and downs, but largely doing well. Then he brings in somebody who's less mercurial, who's more sort of like a safe pair of hands because it's grown into a large enterprise. And that person allies with the board and forces him out of his own company, right? So you would be the caustic nerd at that point. You're like, and they go on, let's say, to sweet talk the markets and everything, and they're seen as like the savior, and you were, just a brat or something. And now you're the outsider looking in. But the spineless outsider, threw you out because they saw a power opportunity. And you'd built this wonderful house, and they wanted to live in it. I'm trying to think of other examples. Like, if it is a business, if the business is the location, then it could be a business in any sort of. It could be anything: a furniture business, a security business, something where the person that founded it, which really was the lifeblood, gets ousted. So I think that's it. This reminds me of something which I want to put a pin in, which is biographies. The biographies as I'm going to call it fodder. It's not a good word, but you remember, like back in the day, it was a Warner Brothers or one of the studios kind of made themselves by doing biographies, basically. Dramatizing them, yes. Biographies of mafiosos and you name it. And that was really compelling to people. And they based the stories on people that had existed and stories that had taken place, and they just aggrandized them, right? So in this way, if we sort of took the Jobs example, that could be, we could take elements of that because they ring true, because they are, but put them in a new fictional landscape. And it might be an interesting way to explore character and narrative. So I just kind of put that out there. So if we followed that idea, then the failure to launch in this case is founder, mercurial, caustic, whatever, founder is ousted. Oh my God, it's the cat. It's just the cat. Toby's disappeared.
Sorry, it's just the cat. I completely vetted.
All right, cat, help me out here.
The caustic founder.
Okay, so I'm going to...
the caustic founder.
So let's sort of try that. Let's say that, as a... It's not really a log line per se yet, but we say that, it's usually charismatic founder, right? So in this case, it's caustic, but what's another... caustic is kind of interesting because it's charismatic versus caustic. But...
embittered.
Embittered. Well, they become embittered, but what are they to begin with? Why are they so easily ousted?
Charismatic internet dynamo.
Well, I'll stick with caustic for the moment. Caustic founder.
Well, no, but was he caustic? Or does he become caustic?
Well, I think that he has...
Because don't you want this slick figure? Look, my take on this is you have this slick, silver-suited figure doing the sort of typical Steve Jobs strolling onto, obviously we don't do the polo neck, strolling onto a stage, doing a thing, then walking off the stage and being told he's fired after having launched this new thing. And the next thing we see him, he's fat, he's living in a basement. Oh, cat. And he's covered in Dorito stuff.
Let's see. Mercurial founder hires CEO to take company to next level. Just see here, and then ousted by the board. Well, ousted by CEO, whatever we're going to call it. degenerates.
No, but I mean that's just one take on it. That's a very over the top take on it. But yes, so he's got his stock options or whatever, although those are probably running out. And all people remember him as is this wise ass bully because Steve Jobs was a bully.
So there's kind of a rich has been
stuff done. Yeah.
Or maybe
now he takes pot shots at this stuff, and everyone laughs at him because he was this big figure, and nobody likes anything more than laughing at someone who took themselves far too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's actually found out that the people who took over from him are criminals, and no one's listening to him. So now he's got to find a way to stop them.
Of course, the criminal thing can be pinned on him, because that's the easy way to get rid of that problem, right? Is to say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
he had
to go back to the former employees who he bullied, and now has to sort of ask for their help and work with them, which is the thing he never did. So what we want to see him doing is imperiously striding around this gleaming portal of an office, sacking someone for minor infringement of you haven't cleaned your keyboard sufficiently.
Well, I know it's probably a bit trite to do Silicon Valley, but it is fun to have scenes in these offices that look like playgrounds, right? I actually went to an office that a friend of mine was working at, which was this new startup. Tons of money being dumped on them. They had, lots of kind of high caliber founders. And there was a huge slide right in the middle of the work area that adults could slide down. And there was a playroom, a soft play area for adults above. And I mean, it was so cliche, but everyone just took it in stride. Like, this is
Wow.
this is what we do, right? Nothing weird about it. They had a $50,000 or $80,000 espresso maker that looked like a jet engine, and it had all these great kind of chrome bits and pieces. I mean, so it is kind of fun in those environments with the soft plushies and the slides. It's basically kindergarten, right? So it's like adult kindergarten. And it's a great environment for fights to break out.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Maybe they have sort of office fights like Gladiator every week to see who's going to get the raise or going to get the special plushie or whatever, and they actually have to hit each other with non
Nerf things.
Yeah, Nerf things, exactly. And it's a really aggressive kind of bro academy sort of place. Anyway, well, let's should we try a genre?
What do you want to do? Let's do
topic.
I think we should just move on to it. If you want to get 3 done, I think we need to do another.
Okay.
We need to move on to another one.
You're quite right. All right. Well,
But I mean, you could try genre. I mean, the only problem is if it doesn't come out as comedy, which this kind of is. It feels like a comedy to me.
I don't know. It could be quite dark. I'm thinking there's a darkness.
Well, try a genre then.
All right.
Try a genre.
Let's just see what happens. I mean,
This and it is
crime. Well, there we go.
Okay.
So we were confirmed. We reconfirmed our crime and the premise. Let's just see the premise of this. We're supposed to come up with log lines, but I mean, at this rate, it's old practice. Escape from reality leads to day of reckoning. Hey, that's just confirmation, right? Something about the nerd who's the founder, has a reckoning, gets ousted. There's something about they think that they're basically not in touch with reality. They create their own reality, their own narrative about things, and then they become really bitter as to what happens to them. And they have to watch this smug, happy person, really making splashes, and the media loves them, and the Wall Street loves them, and it's so, so rosy. But they know that they're terrible, corrupt. They just can't get anybody else.
Right.
Well, they believe that to be true. They just can't find proof. This person's too squeaky clean. All right, I think you're right.
we've got
in
that
terms
one.
of a log line here, we have the beginnings of something. So Mercurial founder hires CEO to take company to the next level. Let's see. You know what? Let's say hire CEO. Let's see, to impress Wall Street or something and the board. I don't know, something like this. To impress the markets. The market. I don't know, something like that. Ousted by CEO, degenerates, tries to make a comeback. Rich has been plotting revenge, discovers colon a plot, has to ask employees he bullied to help him. Okay, that sounds like, yeah, sort of it's got a little logline essence in there. So, okay, so we can put the pin in that as something we can refine the language of. All right, so I'm going to move the decks down here. See how I can do that with my little frame.
Wow, look at that.
Whoops, except I'm moving everything else around. Why can't I get it to do what I want it to do? Okay. So yeah, so again, we don't need all that gubbins up there. But let's see. Let's take a conflict, and I'm gonna put that there. And let's take an arc. I'm gonna put it down here so we don't have to muck about with those things. Another archetype. Let's take. Let's try this one here. This modifier. Let's take that modifier. And I don't know, let's take a topic. Let's try it. Let's see if we, I don't know, let's take a topic and see what happens with that. Okay, so our first character combo is an eternal optimist, lovable rogue. Gosh, okay. Yes. Don Quixote? I don't know. It's sort of a, what do we got here? Someone who keeps landing on their feet. It's all good.
It's I'm sorry to do a British reference, but it's Del Boy, right?
Explain.
From Only Fools and Horses.
Oh, okay. Oh my
television
God, that goes
sitcom.
back. That goes back in time.
Well, of course, it goes back.
Showing our age.
Or it's something like Bilko, right? He's just an adaptation of the Bilko character from Sergeant Bilko, who's exactly the same thing. A rogue because he's trying to improve his own life, but lovable because at the same time he's loyal to the people around him and will try and improve their lives too, kind of. And he's an optimist because he keeps launching these plots even though they keep getting foiled.
Okay. So not selfish. Yeah, selfish, but generous to others. It's kind of
it's sort of, I mean, the way it usually worked with Bilko is he'd hatch a plan to help himself. Someone else would find out about it, so he'd bring those people in as well to get rewarded, and then it would usually fall apart, but with a positive twist for him. Or he'd get his comeuppance, but he never really did.
Okay, so hatch a plan, help himself, concedes to others who want in, fails, but somehow whole is good.
But the eternal optimist idea is he'll keep doing the things. It's like a lovable criminal who keeps going after the next big thing. But
yeah. Well, what is that great quote about, twice as coincidence, three times as, isn't it about optimism where, you at some point, when is it optimism versus magical thinking?
Right. Yes. I mean, yes, that's, is it optimist coming up against reality?
Right. I mean, we love the optimist to a point. I actually find that in real life that a lot of people don't really like optimists in the long run. They sort of in the beginning think, well, it's kind of fun. The person's easy to be around, but over time they don't like that persistence, dogged belief in something that doesn't pan out. It irritates them, and in a sort of cynical way, they relish the optimist getting their comeuppance. Maybe we, as an audience, kind of like that, but we also like the attributes of the optimist in some way. So
certainly more than the pessimist. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, in many ways, there are two things American films require. The first is an optimist, because otherwise they'll just give up and stop. and the second is a legal system where people can not be sent to jail or get out of jail, and that lets you do sequels.
If at first you don't succeed, try again. Yeah,
Yes.
I like that. Let's see. If at first you don't succeed, try again. I like that. So lovable rogue
Okay.
element, I think, is good too, because you have the sort of that fact that they hatch plans that are kind of self-focused, but then they're like, oh, somebody else wants in, and it's like, okay, gotta cut them in. That's kind of cool. All right, so the other...
There's also an interesting thing there, too.
Yeah.
They could also be an eternal optimist about other people, which is interesting because they themselves are incredibly unreliable, and yet they'll only see the best in other people. So the true shock for that person would be being played by someone else.
Okay, tell me what you mean. So, hang on. They themselves are unreliable,
if
but
you're an
only
eternal optimist,
see
you could
the
also...
best in other people.
Yeah, well, they don't see other people. If they're an optimist, they don't see other people as, hey, everyone is like me, scamming and trying to do their best. They see everyone else as essentially trustworthy people who they can play.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because that's part of the optimist thing. If you weren't an optimist, then you would see everyone as a reflection of you. Everyone is a player. Everyone is trying to get by.
Playable.
But that might be another version of optimism, because then I'm not really hurting anyone because you're all players just like me.
Well, okay, that's interesting. It's complicated. I'm imagining, taking these words at face value for a moment. If I just parse it out, because this is what I find interesting about some of these modifiers and archetypes, is they counter each other in ways that are interesting to tease out. So lovable rogue is it sounds to me like somebody who, doesn't really do what we would condone. Their behavior is a bit, not antisocial, but it's a little bit past beyond the pale of what's acceptable. But because they're charismatic and they do it in the way they do it, we cut them slack, let them off. You know what I mean? It's like the favorite son is always kind of doing dodgy things or getting in trouble, but the mother loves him to no end, no matter what he does, kind of thing. So we have a character like that who's who is outside the sort of respectability in terms of the behavior, and they're lovable in some way. Maybe part of his eternal optimist, like you're saying. They just they keep doing terrible terrible things. Whoops, that's not what I intended to do. They keep doing terrible things, but they do it with such aplomb. But they do it so well. And
okay,
yeah,
that works.
I know, something like that. I don't know. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I'm sure I've met people like this. Okay. So then we have, on the other side of them, a lustful turncoat.
I mean, it's interesting in that they're kind of flip sides of each other.
Yeah. Well, the fact that the opposite is the turncoat makes me think the lovable rogue is actually quite reliable in terms of relationships. That they're sort of terrible and a disaster in many ways, but they will stick by you.
Right.
It's not disposable.
The other possibility, but it's also the thing I was talking about, which is you bring that lovable rogue up against a lustful turncoat who turns his life around and destroys him. And that's suddenly that's testing your optimism, because you've been played. Right.
So lovable rogue. This isn't les liaisons dangereuses exactly, but it's you're impressed by how clever and awful the lead character is, and then he gets destroyed.
In the comedy version, this is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Okay.
But since we're probably not going to get comedy, maybe we will. I don't know. It's interesting to take it a darker route where you've got someone who is it's the typical femme fatale.
Okay, so I'm going to say the rogue is somehow in the conflict section. The rogue has somehow destroyed by his or I keep saying his. I'm a guy. Okay, I'm going to say their.
I think look.
loyalty.
I think the rogue is. I think that's fine that the rogue is a guy, and we make this lustful turncoat another guy.
Okay.
There you go. So it's a homosexual relationship at the heart of this.
Well, I'll leave it. I'll leave the
a
gender open for
en fatale.
determination. But we have the rogue is possibly destroyed by their loyalty or passion. So this is something like blind trust leads to destruction, which makes me wonder what happens if I add a premise here and see what we get. Is this going to be helpful or hurt us? Oh, that's a no curbside pickup. That's a strange. Okay, that was a random. That is random. So we have a curbside pickup to think about. I'm not quite sure how that works.
Well, as the rogue is coming back from a job, he's helped by the lustful turncoat. Things get serious between them, and then he's completely. Oh.
Okay. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. All right. Well, that is a lovable rogue, getting themselves in deep doo-doo.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps because they had a plan that was going to help, them and these other people, and it really backfired. Maybe because they relied upon the lustful turncoat, who really, led them down the garden path. So I think we have the lustful turncoat. It doesn't have to be sort of a relationship of passion. It could just be that, someone else says, I'm really excited by what you're suggesting, and I have what you need, and drags them into an intrigue that is just designed to blow everything up.
No, lustful specifically. If it said
power, lust for power,
eager, okay,
power,
true,
passion. I mean, what are the other kind of lustful things you could lust for? Status,
money.
So we have to keep these options open. It could be for passion, it could be for power, status, it could be something else. It could be just money.
But it's more, in a sense, it's what does the lovable rogue do after they've been betrayed? That's when your story really begins.
Mm-hmm.
If they're an optimist, are they going to try and save this lustful turncoat? Are they going to try and find the good in them? Or are they going to embark on revenge?
Let's see what our topic is. We got to deal with here. We got a culture war of some kind. Oh boy. Let's see what our conflict is. That one threw kind of wobbly there. Something missing reappears. Oh, something from their past, maybe. Actually, that makes me think that the character is a lustful turncoat is someone who has burned them in the past, but comes back again and says, I'm a renewed person. And they draw them yet again into the same intrigue. It's like Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football. It's like, I am not who I was then. Trust me. And the lovable rogue are like, yes, I do.
I always knew there was good in you.
Yeah.
I do. I always,
And they do it again.
Yeah.
And the people around the lovable rogue goes, how could you fall for it a second time?
That's fantastic.
And the curbside pickup is that they meet curbside. It's a chance encounter, or so they think.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like, it's you. Yeah. The culture war thing, tricky. Trying to think of that's a topic, I guess, on the cards because it's been in the news a lot lately where and I wrote something about it in our forum just yesterday. So there it is, topical. But it was about what I was writing was about how we see culture war being used. I think it was invented in the 90s as a term or something, and then it's been used increasingly more and more recently. And on the face of it, it's people that have very different values, beliefs, or perceptions disagreeing with one another. And of course, it's war, so it's even a big disagreement. But you know what? That's normal, right? People don't agree; they don't see eye to eye. The different experiences. That's called life. But the fact that it's turned into a cultural war means something's been weaponized, and the idea that I guess is suggesting that this is not okay. It's not okay for people to have these very different opinions and ideas, and therefore we must have war over it. And to me, it's topical because it just distracts people from really what's required. There are issues to deal with, and culture war is a distraction. And to me, it's sort of like an end of empire. When the empire is falling apart, and the powers that be don't want to see a plebeian revolt, they encourage culture war because they want to see the plebs fight out amongst each other rather than to topple the powers that be. So, I feel like we're in a similar circumstance now where culture war, fanning the flames, media works for status quo, and it's like, hey guys, yeah, you duke it out amongst yourselves. We're too busy making money off the markets. So that's why that card is there. I don't know how it fits in with this. Could
unless she's working for one side or the other. He is.
Well, it makes me think of media. I mean, could it be that, she is one of those, she's a journalist or who says, I know I wrote that terrible piece about you last time, but or a PR person who, worked for the other side, and now says, I want to work for you. I want to, and can rehabilitate your image. Clearly somebody who they have known before. Either I'm going to assume that they were okay. So to put some shape on this, I'm going to say that they were on same side once upon a time, but tricked. Returns renewed. Same thing happens again, kind of thing, right? So it's just, this is the. I'm gonna make that a little smaller so we can read it all. So that's sort of the arc of it, kind of thing, but that's not the resolution. I don't know. Does that help? Does any idea? Should I throw in something else? Should I throw in everything in the kitchen sink at this?
I think so. I think something else other than culture war.
Okay, let's see.
It's fun. There are ways of doing it.
Yeah, let's have a look here. I'll put another topic. I'll throw in, I don't know, the random curbside pickup. I don't know, is that helpful? Let's try something else here. So let's see what we get if we try a different topic to grapple with. Instant karma. Oh, okay. That might be a little more appropriate. We need a domain for this. And
the tricky thing with these, when we're throwing out these cards at the end, is we're trying to make them fit the thing we've already done.
Yeah, I know.
And so
it's picking our brains.
They're either not working, or we're going, yay, that one works.
Yeah.
But that doesn't feel, we've come up with the thing. So I think if the things don't work, if they're not instantly going, right, this is a fantastic new direction. This spins this on its head. Then I think you just get rid of them. They're there to be helpful.
The culture war to me could actually be sort of the conflict, in the sense that here's my take on it. The reason why the lovable rogue is so enamored with this person is they think that they share the same perception on the world. They feel an affinity, but actually they don't. And that's what the turncoat is hiding from them. And so their relationship is a culture war, because the turncoat is teaching them a lesson every time, or something of that nature. And teachable moments, and then serves you right.
Right.
That's sort of the turncoat. Maybe that's the reason for the culture war, is that this is a rinse and repeat for them. It's like you're just too easy, to take to the cleaners each time, because you keep trusting me. You think that we think alike, but actually we don't. I despise you, or I despise your optimism or your bullshit take on things or whatever, and I'm just going to keep doing this to you until you wise up. So maybe that's maybe that's sort of the basis of their relationship. Again, I think of Lucy, Charlie Brown, and the football. You know, it's like, why do each of those players keep going back to that setup? Right? Why does that keep happening? Why does he keep going back to her in that situation? Why does she keep pulling it off on him? You know, they never get tired of this. They never get tired of this ruse, of this. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're caught in some kind of endless loop. And okay, so I mean, I don't know what the logline is yet, but I think it's kind of an interesting relationship. It's starting to sound interesting to me. So these something missing reappears. These characters are almost destined to keep doing this to each other, and everyone around them is starting to get really tired of it. It's like, why do you keep going back to that relationship? And somehow they both need it. I think this is a cynical pragmatist. I think is this character, the cynical pragmatist, and we have the eternal optimist, and they need each other. That's the irony, but don't know it, or don't recognize it, or something, don't understand it. Maybe that's better. They don't understand it. Maybe one does. You know, they just like duping the other. But why do they like duping the other? What is that so necessary, right? Okay, so let's see what we can put a shape on this. So, let's see. Eternal optimist, lovable rogue, who rarely escapes the repercussions of their, rarely escapes the repercussions. Let's say, I'm just going to put it like that. Re-encounters blast from the past. Let's say Nemesis,
right?
Who says they have changed?
Who claims to be reformed?
Okay, who claims? To
have reformed?
To be reformed. Offered tip on new caper, accepts, same thing, same disaster,
betrayed again,
same disaster, betrayed again, betrayed as before. Why do they keep returning
doing this
to the same well? I mean, I think what would be interesting is if the characters around them are kind of unaware of their whole past. They're just talked about, and then they see it happens, and they're like, well, then why would you do that again? And then they discover it's happened many times. This isn't just twice. It's like, well, you know, when we were in college, you know, this happened, and then when we were out, and, you know, this happened. And they're like, oh my God, what is wrong with you two? Like, there's something. That's sort of it's a weird buddy. It's a weird buddy story where
it's a codependency nightmare.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. The codependency nightmare story. And it sounds very comedy. I'm curious to see though what happens if we throw a genre at it that we might not expect. I'm just going to see. It feels like comedy, but just curious to test the waters. Romantic comedy. There we go.
There you go.
So it's edging us in the romantic. Well, even if they're not obviously romantically inclined. It is kind of romance, the way the two of them just keep doing this. So it doesn't have to be a literal. It could be a bromance. It could be, it could be there could be a sexual relationship. It doesn't have to be. It could just be that these two
doesn't have to be.
really need each other for some reason. They need to kind of testing. Maybe it is about. Maybe the sort of takeaway is sort of the testing to reaffirm their beliefs or something. Let's say test themselves. I don't know. I did, in terms of a story and message, I was thinking about one which wrote with somebody a long time ago, which is love is giving someone permission to drive you crazy. And I thought that's kind of an interesting idea that, most other people that drive you crazy, you just say, I've had enough of that, right? But for some reason, this other person keeps coming in your life and you keep going back to the well, even if it's destructive or codependent or something, and you can't help it. You feel like it's destiny. So that's kind of interesting. All right. Well, 2, I think, was enough. I think we did pretty well, actually. I'm just curious what the other random was to see. Guru Garden. The Guru Garden. Maybe that's their joint. Their joint.
One of them is a relationship guru, and this former flame shows up, and she's the one who just keeps screwing with him and blowing him apart and making all of his guru stuff pointless.
Is this shared? Is this experience that you?
But no, I think this is good.
Thank you. Yeah, no, so all right. So let's just kind of recap here. We did 2 of these in 45 minutes, an hour. I guess it took us an hour. So we did half an hour each. We focused more on the characters and their kind of conflict with each other, and that's how we sort of came up with a proto-logline. And I don't know. It felt pretty good to me. I know what you mean about. I think the comment you made though about things that force us to try to conform to something new. I take your point. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. I think what we probably need to be in the discipline of is saying, it's not what we want or expected, but let's think about it for a minute or two. And then if if it does open our mind to something new and exciting, great. If not, okay, let's put it to the side. That's what it's there for. It's a prompt. And we're trying to, really, to me, the cards thing is not only to give us a framework to come together and do something productive in the time, but it's like, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but what about this? It's sort of like bad notes. You're getting bad notes from an executive who's saying, hey, turn this thing into something else. And normally you'd be thinking, oh God, no, please don't do this to me because I'm on a course here and you're diverging me from that course. But because we're doing this together as sort of an exercise, we can take it on stride and see if it actually does create an opportunity. That's something new. So this to me is the irony of it, is that we're basically executives giving each other bad notes, and that can sometimes lead us to an interesting direction because we're in a safe space versus in a meeting where you've really prepared and you've got the whole thing worked out, and then someone says, yeah, but let's turn this into the absolute opposite thing that you could never have thought of before the meeting, and now it's like, oh God, right. What do I do? I'm sure you've been in that situation many times.
Yep.
All right. It's great to see you again. Thanks for sharing this hour with me, and I'll type it.
No, it's my pleasure. So look, the one thing I think we need to think about is the transformational engine, which was a thing that you talked about a lot in the early stages, rightly. And that we're not building that into this. We're putting that onto it. But in a sense, if we're holding to that, the modifier is that engine. The modifier is the thing that in the protagonist is going to be tested.
So you mean that in this framework, we got to decide early on who the protagonist is, and then what.
Well, we seem to be kind of doing that anyway,
Yeah,
even in the first one where we were.
Okay, so you're saying make that
movie
explicit
yeah.
as the workflow here. That's the objective.
And that's part of. So we know that it's the eternal optimism that is going to be tested, and is at the end, is that going to be reaffirmed?
Right.
By the midpoint of them having become an extreme pessimist, or is it at the end they become an extreme pessimist, having at the middle embraced optimism to its fullest extent, and then realized, oh God, that was wrong.
Okay, so I'm going to pull up the other one.
That's overly simplistic.
I'm going to pull up the other one to see if it follows a similar. So you're
Right.
you're suggesting that in the framework itself that we make explicit that what you're trying to do here is find which character combo probably is your protagonist, looking at the modifier and saying that's the thing that will be tested by the other character, and seeing how the conflict
tested or reinforced.
Tested or reinforced. Okay, tested or reinforced, and how the conflict helps you achieve that.
Do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
no, I'm simply saying that seems to me to be a simpler. Right. We know what the trajectory is.
This brings me to an interesting. This brings me to a thought, an observation, which is that, we all have our strengths and weaknesses when we're developing stories, and writers are the same. They have different skill sets that they can bring to bear, and I always found that for myself that character was something that I struggled with. There were other elements that came more naturally to me. And even though I'm fascinated by people and whatever, I found character to be kind of hard to get my head around at times. And so, in the past, you and I came up with, some other character modeling, and I had this sort of archetype scheme, which was based on the Enneagrams and stuff, which I thought was kind of interesting. And we played around with those. But ironically, and I was going to flesh that out further and see, and I still would like to work on that. But this presents a different way in, which I found kind of refreshing, because it doesn't make me focus on the anxieties that I often have when I try to think about character, because it offered a kind of way in that I found fun, sort of, as you say, sort of like, here's these combos, who's our protagonist, what is this conflict about? And that gave me an anchor that was more enjoyable. So hopefully other people who feel the same way that I do would find this a great approach to character development in the context of a logline or a short synopsis or something, when you're working out the arc of these people. So thank you for that. That was awesome. Thank you. And hope to see you again soon.